Alright guys, welcome back to Days of Darkness and welcome to the very first requested review here on the channel. That's right, my buddy Jake, a fella I work with, requested that I review the Lighthouse, and Jake, it was an amazing pick. This one goes out to you, buddy. Thank you very much. Now, before we get into it, again, another apology. I know this video is probably going to get out a little later than I would have liked. That's just because life's going absolutely crazy right now. And, you know why, for anyone who hasn't, for anyone who's been living under a rock, basically. Corona mania is still running wild all over the world, and, yeah, running wild in my life, too. But, yeah, so anyways, let's just talk about The Lighthouse, man. This movie kicks so much ass. Now, straight away, first of all, let me, list off the cast real quick. This is starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. That's it, really. They're the only two. They're the two main characters, and they are the two characters you spend the most time with. And it was written and directed by Robert Eggers. Now, I need to talk about Robert Eggers for a second because the amount of respect I have for filmmakers like him is nearly limitless, and I'll explain why. We live in a world where Hollywood's really always been like this, where they want to make movies that are absolutely just accessible to almost everybody. There's no, man, how would I even say this? They really try to appeal to all audiences. Robert Eggers doesn't really give a shit about that. And I'm not saying he's not trying to appeal to people who are going to go see this movie, but I'll tell you right off the bat, this is not a movie for everybody. This movie is a slow burn. It is very deliberately paced. But man, the fucking payoff, some of the payoffs in this movie, it's worth the wait. And I remember I actually watched this with my mom, and everyone's going to eventually call me a mama's boy because I spend so much time with my mom, and, fuck you. I love my mom. But anyways, little sipskis for the good brothers. But anyways, I was watching this with her, and she really didn't like it. And I asked her why, and she was like, "Oh, it's too long." And then I looked at it, I'm like, it's only 2 hours. It's a standard length of a movie. And that's what Robert Eggers does so well. Is this is a 2-hour film. It's a little under 2 hours, actually, about an hour 50. But the way this film is shot and written and directed, the cinematography, the style of this movie, it is very, very, I guess it's trippy, really, because the whole theme of this movie is people basically losing their minds and staying on this island, on this lighthouse, for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. And as an audience member, you feel every piece of that from the way this film is made. And I just gotta say right off the bat, I really love this movie. No, not everybody does, for the reasons I just stated. A lot of people don't like slow burns, and that's fine. It's not for everybody. And again, that's why Robert Eggers is so good, because he sets out to make the movie that he wants to make. He also did The Witch, which was also very... That's a rude interruption there. The Witch is also very much in the same vein as The Lighthouse. Two completely different films, but that same slow burn with the payoff at the end being so incredible. Really like Robert Eggers' style, and yeah, I'm gonna quit rambling about Robert Eggers, but yeah, props to you, dude. This is a kick-ass movie, and you should be very, very proud of yourself. I know you needed my approval, so there you go. Anyways, so just to get into a little bit of spoiler-free stuff here, if I had to describe this movie in one word, immersive. Very, very, very immersive. you feel every piece of this experience that, especially Robert Pattinson's character is going through. You feel every little bit of it. It, like I said before, it makes you feel like you're spending the time with these characters, and it makes you feel like you're going crazy yourself. Not nearly as crazy as these two get, but nonetheless. And I really don't think that's a spoiler. The fact saying that they go crazy. I mean, it's in the trailers. Come on, people. Come on, people. But anyways, just to go into the immersiveness of it, I want to really quick talk about my theater experience because before theaters were killed, basically, I had the pleasure of watching this movie in the theater, and it is shot in black and white, and so whenever like there was a moment, obviously I was just my eyes were glued to the screen the whole runtime of this movie for the most part. But there was a moment in this film, it was towards the end, I would say about hour 30 into the film. That's a rough estimate, obviously. But about an hour and 30 minutes, I just took the time to look. Because whenever I can tell that a movie is really impacting people and really affecting people, I like to look at the audience. Not just like stare into their faces, but I like to look and just see how people are reacting. And one thing I noticed when I took my eyes away from the screen, this is how into this movie I was. It literally looked like everything around me was in black and white. Obviously, when you're in a theater, it's dark, and so the light illuminating from I mean, there wasn't a lot of color going on, so it gives that effect, but this was just different. Everything literally looked like we were living in black and white. Yeah, I know. It sounds crazy, but it's true. And it's really unfortunate a lot of people haven't seen this movie. A lot of people I talk to who are just casual film viewers are not a fucking psycho like me. They really they skip this one for a lot of the reasons that I stated earlier. Oh, it's slow. I heard it's really slow. And anyone who even slightly enjoys film, I always recommend they go see this. They might not like it, but I love it. So, yeah, and really quick, just to round out the spoiler-free stuff, the performances. Robert Pattinson and William, why can't I say his name? Willem Dafoe. Oh my god! Like, it's very rare that I mean, obviously, I've seen good performances. That's a given. These two in this film, it is very hard to make my jaw drop. And there are moments in this film, there is dialogue in this film that just my jaw dropped. Especially a standout scene with Willem Dafoe. Just a rant he goes on, and it's literally just a shot of him looking batshit insane and just talking. Well, yelling, but you know what I'm saying. It's literally just him spouting off dialogue. And the way he does it, it is so captivating. It is so immersive. Again, there's that word again. Absolutely incredible. Robert Pattinson obviously has incredible moments too. I know, like, he has this curse, and also Kristen Stewart does as well, of being the Twilight people. There's none of that here. It's a real shame he was in that movie because, like most people, think those movies were dog shit because they were. But man, Robert Pattinson does incredible in this. But I'm gonna stop rambling about the performances. But all you need to know is that both men do absolutely incredible. There are some other actors and actresses in this movie as well, and they all do fantastic with what they have to do, which is not a whole lot, but everyone who was casted in this movie, it's one of those situations where I cannot picture anybody else being in that role. I just can't. So yeah, guys, that'll round out the spoiler-free section. Let's spoil the shit out of this movie, guys. I'm really excited to dive deep in this with you guys, and yeah, on to the spoiler section. All right, spoiler time. Your ass has been warned. Now, the story of this is pretty interesting. It seems pretty, I don't want to say one note on the surface. Obviously, as the film goes on, it becomes much more complex. But in the beginning, it's simply two men who are assigned to look after a lighthouse for 4 weeks, which is already a long time. You get introduced to Thomas, who is Willem Dafoe's character, and he's been a wickie his whole life, or at least a lot of his adult life. You can tell. I mean, he's very weathered, he's very gritty, and he's used to all of this. You can tell he is in his element. He's constantly, I mean, the sailor talk. I mean, he is well at home with this lighthouse, and he also has a quite the infatuation with the light itself. There are multiple instances in this film where you can see him just being up in the actual like light fixture itself and just being mesmerized. He almost gets a high out of it. And there's even it's insinuated that he's like basically fucking the light. He just he's in pure ecstasy and pure. There's some sort of link with him in that light. He's very protective of it. It's his job to look after it. Winslow, who is Robert Pattinson's character, constantly, multiple times throughout this film, asks, "Why can't I go up? Why can't I watch the light?" And he's like, "No, it's mine." He's very, very, very protective of his light, his precious light, and a very mysterious relationship between him and that lighthouse. And then you get, like I said before, Winslow, Robert Pattinson's character. This is his first time ever. Really, it's his first time ever looking after a lighthouse. I mean, he's just a guy looking for work. At least you know, assume so at the beginning. But yeah, he's just kind of looking for a job. This is a job. That's why he's here. Willem Dafoe's character is in charge of him. Now you get a lot of humor in this too, which was pretty unexpected going into this. I mean, one of the first thing Thomas does is he farts. You just hear a, and that's what it's funny, and it's again very admirable because a film like this, I heard a lot of people speculating that it's gonna be pretentious and it's gonna take itself too seriously. And again, props to Robert Eggers. You know, he has this very brooding environment and this very sinister story, but he's not shy about putting a fart joke or, like any type of humor in it whatsoever. Very good stuff by him, and a very good decision because it makes the story and the characters a little more realistic instead of them just being these brooding people, which they are, but there's a lot of levity in there as well. Naturally, when you're, looking after a lighthouse for a month, you're gonna, shoot the shit. You're gonna crack jokes and yada yada yada, and they do. So, yeah, you spend 4 weeks with these guys. It feels like it, and it's funny because it only takes out hour one of the movie. Just a lot of interaction. Thomas is very adamant about being the dominant one. He's, if I tell you to take apart this lighthouse and scrub every piece of wood and shine, he says, if I tell you to take every nail out of every board and scrub it until it shines like a sea whale's pecker or something like that, you'll do it. He's he's very much an asshole to Winslow. And Winslow, on the surface, you would think he is the protagonist. He's the one just constantly getting talked down to, constantly getting berated, and there are moments of levity when they're drunk and they're like just shooting the shit. That's when Thomas becomes a little more tolerable. But Winslow has his own little dirty secret, and you spend mostly the runtime, the first hour of the runtime, in them in those 4 weeks, and then there becomes a scene with a seagull. So this seagull has constantly been just pestering Winslow. He's constantly, he's fucking with him when he's trying to sleep. He keeps like coming up to the window and tapping his little beak on it and just being an annoying little fucker. And you can tell it's the same one too because he has one eye. This seagull, I guess, has one eye for whatever reason, and Thomas actually catches Winslow sparring with his gull and shooing him away, and he says, it'd be bad luck to kill a seabird, and Winslow doesn't listen, and there's a moment in this film where he absolutely just annihilates this seagull. And when he does that, it pans up to the compass on top of the lighthouse, and you can see the winds drastically change. It's very eerie how it unnaturally moves around. You'd think with a compass it's pretty not gradual, but it moves. You expect it to move in a certain way, and once he kills that bird, man, fucking all hell breaks loose. And Thomas was right. Thomas was very much right. It is bad luck to kill a seabird because when it comes time, when the 4 weeks are up, there is no boat, and they're stuck there for this foreseeable future. And that's when shit really, really, really starts to hit the fan. They're drinking a lot more, and you can just see them just completely lose their minds. And yeah, this is the spoiler section of the review, but I don't want to give away a lot of stuff still. Like, I'm spoiling the overall story, but really you need to experience this and basically watch these guys lose their mind. I'm not going to sit here and list off every little single thing they do. That's what the movie is for. But yeah, so once these guys are just good and crazy, there comes a moment in the film where Winslow, essentially in a drunken haze, spills his beans to Thomas. And holy shit, is it quite the reveal. Watching this in the theater and not knowing it was coming was insane. So yeah, they're laying there drunk, and Winslow's about to say it, and he keeps trying to say it, and Thomas is like, no, don't do it. Don't spill your beans to me. I don't want to know. I don't want the burden. Just keep it to yourself. And Winslow can't help it, and the guilt completely overwhelms him, and he reveals the fact that before this, he was he says this earlier on in the film, that he was a woodworker at first. He was a lumberjack, basically, and he ended up watching a man named Winslow die. And he did not help him. He did not go out of his way to save him or do anything. He just watched this man die and get swallowed. He fell in these, and just, it's kind of hard to pick up exactly what happened, at least for me. But basically, this dude gets crushed by a bunch of logs, and the guy you think is Winslow had the opportunity to help him, and he just didn't. Is basically what happened. So he says that after he died, he essentially just took his identity. There's more. He had more job opportunities on the table, this being one of them. And he's like, hey, I like money. So he just took his identity. And back then, it was a lot easier to do that than it is now. So he did it, and he reveals that his name is actually Thomas as well. And that leads into one of the probably I'd say the scariest moment of this film. There's definitely a lot of them, but the scariest moment has to be, just these eerie shots of just the interior of the lighthouse and just slow panning and slow zooms, and you keep hearing uh, the old, I guess I'll call him the older Thomas, Willem Dafoe. You keep hearing Willem Dafoe just constantly whispering, "Why'd you spill your beans, Tommy?" In the theater, it was like, ooh. And you could literally feel his voice just crawling up the back of your neck. It was, ooh, very unsettling. And yeah, so he spills his beans to Thomas, and that basically turns everything on its head. He then discovers that Willem Dafoe's Thomas is planning on docking his wages or cutting his pay to basically where he's not getting shit for all the work he's done, and Tommy just loses it. He just fucking these two get in a pretty brutal fight, and it leads to some pretty odd moments. Uh, Robert Pattinson's character Thomas, because now it's gonna get confusing because Thomas and Thomas, they both have last names. I do not remember them. Get over it. But Robert Pattinson ends up getting the best of Thomas, of Willem Dafoe, and he ends up making him bark like a dog, and he ends up putting a leash or a rope around his neck or whatever, basically insinuating or acting as a leash. And he makes him just bark, and he's walking him like a dog, and he walks him over to the base of the lighthouse, and he buries Willem Dafoe alive. And once again, you get an amazing moment with Willem Dafoe giving again just an amazing performance, literally having dirt shoveled in his mouth and in his face and his eyes, and he's able to give this amazing dialogue. Couldn't really tell you what the fuck he's saying because not only is dirt muffling his voice, but this character constantly spouts nonsense throughout this film. I'm sure if you read into it a lot more, you could get a little more out of it, but that's what I got out of it. It's just random senile old nonsense and just spouting off like a crazy person. But yeah, so Mr. Thomas ends up being buried alive, and Tommy, I guess I'll differentiate by that, Thomas and Tommy. Uh, Tommy goes back to the lighthouse, and it's escaping me what he was trying to do, but essentially he's wanting to get into the light. He's wanting to go up into the lighthouse and check out what the hell has been just hypnotizing Willem Dafoe. He just wants to know. And I believe he's going to go get the keys, probably. And you just see, just total Shining style, Willem Dafoe's character come with an axe. "It's my light!" And he axes Robert Pattinson right in the shoulder. And props to the special effects, because you see the wound afterwards, and that thing looks like it's legitimately bleeding. I have seen some pretty bad wounds in my life. I know what that looks like, and holy shit, that was very, very good. It's a small thing, you gotta pay attention for it, but I've seen this film 3 times now, and you pick up on little stuff like that. So really good props for that. Obviously, Thomas is just so out of it at this point and so insane that he just takes the axe out of his shoulder, knocks Willem Dafoe down, and kills him, which we'll get to the details of that later on. It's kind of a spoiler alert, but whatever. But yeah, so kills Mr. Thomas, goes up into the light, and you get one of the most intense, weird moments where he's just mesmerized, and then he starts screaming and screaming and yelling, and it's just getting more and more distorted until eventually he, I guess, loses control of his body and just falls down the stairs. And then you get this, and this was weird for me. It's weird now. It's hard to interpret this, but the next thing you see is Robert Pattinson just getting eaten alive by seagulls. And it's so gross. His insides are just, his stomach is completely gone, and you just, in his eye, like the skin around his eye is gone, the muscle, they're biting at the muscle in his eye, and it's so fucking gross. And it just is, it's a slow pan out on that, it's a slow zoom out on that, just macabre scene. And the thing that's very odd to me is that you see this, he's obviously in the middle of the ocean on an island, but there is no lighthouse. At least in sight. I mean, he could have been over by the rocks where he had gone multiple times in the film. I don't know. I don't know how he ended up there, if he's falling down the stairs. Lot of interpretation with that, but all I know is it's an absolutely chilling way to end this movie. Now, let's get into the interpretation, because my interpretation from all of this, because this is a film that is very much so left up to interpretation. I mean, this movie leaves you thinking, and a lot of people don't like that. I mean, going back to my mom and her viewing experience, when this film ended, she goes, "That's it? What the fuck? What happened? What? How did he get there?" Blah 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 blah. And to be fair, those are fair questions. I can see. That's the thing, when people say they don't like this movie, I'm not gonna just tell them they're wrong. Because first of all, I'm not bold enough to assume my opinion means all that much. But I can see why people would have those gripes. Does it bother me? No. Because I know there's a deeper meaning in all of this, and it's a film meant to be interpreted. And many different people have many different interpretations. Excuse me. I always get gassy during these things. But I've heard a lot of people say that they think Robert Pattinson's character is in purgatory, and this is all just, or hell even, and this is his punishment for doing what he's done, and that would explain why there's no lighthouse and when he's being eaten alive by seabirds. My interpretation of this really is that it is two men on an island with a lighthouse. Obviously, that's their job, to look after the lighthouse. And they just lose their mind. There's a moment where Willem Dafoe even says, "How long have we been here? 2 weeks? 2 days? 2 years? How long has it been? Remind me, I don't know." Is a loose quote, because I can't remember. He obviously talks in a lot of sailor jargon, but basically he's like, "How long have we been here? I have absolutely no idea." And to me, they just lose their mind. There's a lot of visions. There's a vision of a pretty intense graphic vision of a mermaid that Robert Pattinson has. And there's a lot of different visual hallucinations that character experiences. A lot of them are very interesting. When he's that last fight with Defoe's Thomas, where they made Willem Dafoe basically look like a Davy Jones-esque. He has like just mold and seaweed, and just tentacles are coming off of his out of his back, I think. One of them's like choking him and all this crazy shit. And it's kind of alluded to at near the beginning. You just see a tentacle just kind of go across the screen, but that was pretty crazy. And there's just a lot of different hallucinations, and I truly believe that this is just a case of a man who is stricken by guilt over what he did to the original Winslow, and he just loses his mind and goes completely fucking insane. I don't know what Mr. Eggers had in mind with some of the decisions he made, especially that ending where there's just no lighthouse in sight. How did he get there? Did he just crawl over there? That's probably more than likely. If you're looking at this from a realistic standpoint, it's more than likely what he probably did. But yeah, that'll do it for the Lighthouse, guys. Oh, I'm a dumbass. We gotta get into my kill of the movie. What the hell, man? This movie is not overly gory. This movie's not like incredibly graphic or anything like that. It definitely relies more on the tension and the environment to provide the scares. It's interesting. I would consider this a horror movie in a lot of cases. It's weird though, when I went on IMDb, I'm getting better at saying that. I've been practicing. But when I went on IMDb, it labeled it as a sci-fi, which was pretty weird. I mean, I'm not gonna just like say like, no, that's wrong, because I can see it. I guess I wouldn't personally call it that, but to each his own, I guess. But but yeah, so it doesn't really rely on gore a whole lot. There's definitely, as I've mentioned, there's a lot of brutal imagery in this movie, both bloody and otherwise. But man, for me, honorable mentions first of all. That again, that ending shot of Robert Pattinson getting eaten alive by seagulls is absolutely brutal. It's very, very gross. I wouldn't necessarily call it a kill. I mean, he's obviously not gonna live through that, but um, you know, I wouldn't necessarily call it a kill. That's probably what's keeping it off of it, because I don't know. It just doesn't have. I mean, he's still alive when it's happening. And, you don't really see him die, so it's not a kill. Um, I'm not gonna. Another honorable mention goes to the seagull. It's not a human death, so I don't know. I mean, it's a kill, but it's like it's an animal, which I'm sure I'll have someone be like, "Oh, are you saying animals don't matter as much as people?" And I guess I am, but but anyways, uh, but honorable mention goes to the seagull. Fucking Robert Pattinson just grabs this thing, and it's the most brutal animal death I've seen. That was fake. This is the most brutal fake animal death I've seen in a film. Shout out to Cannibal Holocaust. Maybe we'll go over that one day, but it's gonna be a while. But anyways, so he just grabs this seagull and just fucking busts it on this well, and just boom, 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 and this thing just splatters everywhere. It's disgusting, and it's fucking rad. But my kill of the film, honestly, it's probably the most like slasher kill of the movie. So once Robert Pattinson, I hinted at this earlier. Once Robert Pattinson takes that axe out of his shoulder, knocks Willem Dafoe to the ground, and you don't see it happen, but you just get this. He takes the axe, and you just hear this, and you just see this blood and this all this brain matter just spray up into the air. Fucking sick, gross. It happens really quick. It's not the most graphic kill in the world or anything like that, but it is mean-spirited and visceral and just fucked up. And it's awesome. But yeah, so that'll do it for the Lighthouse, guys. A little shorter of a review today. Like I said, I want to leave a lot of this movie up for you to watch, because I really, really think people should at least check this film out once. Again, may not be for you, but good God, I love this movie. So that'll do it for the Lighthouse. Next time, we're going to continue the Friday the 13th franchise with part 2. And yeah, and then we'll get to some more suggestions and requests and all that good stuff. But yeah. Alright, guys. Thank you very much, as always, for stopping by. Keep watching horror and take care of each other. Alright. Have a good one.